Obi-Wan Kenobi doesn't hide on Tatooine. He rebuilds the Jedi Order instead. Everything changes. No hermit in the desert. No Luke raised as a farmer. No desperate, untrained hope. Luke and Leia trained from childhood under the greatest teacher alive. The rebellion has Jedi from the start. Ben Solo never becomes Kylo Ren because wisdom prevents tragedy. One choice. One man refusing to give up. The entire sequel trilogy erased. This is the story of what happens when the negotiator leads instead of hides. When patient wisdom rebuilds what desperate fear destroyed. When the man who failed Anakin Skywalker ensures that failure never repeats. The moment comes in the ashes after Order 66, standing in the ruins of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. Obi-Wan watches the security recordings, sees Anakin slaughter younglings, witnesses his apprentice's complete fall to darkness. Every instinct screams to run, to hide, to take baby Luke and disappear. But something stops him, a vision through the Force. Unclear, but insistent. Running isn't the answer. The Order needs more than survival. He has responsibilities beyond protecting one child. He makes a different choice. He reaches out to other survivors instead of fleeing into exile. Carefully, cautiously, using old Jedi codes and secure channels that the Empire hasn't yet discovered. Master Luminara Unduli escaped from an execution on Kashyyyk. Master Quinlan Vos, having faked his death during the Clone Wars. A dozen Jedi Knights scattered across known space, all in hiding, all terrified, all waiting for someone to tell them what to do. Obi-Wan becomes that someone, not through ambition but through necessity, because someone must, and he's one of the few with the experience and reputation to unite survivors. The network grows slowly over months and years. Survivors are brought together in secret locations, hidden bases on forgotten worlds where the Empire doesn't look. They share information about other Jedi who might have survived, about Force-sensitive children being hunted by Inquisitors, about the Empire's structure and vulnerabilities. Obi-Wan coordinates everything, using diplomatic skills honed over decades to keep frightened people organized and hopeful when hope seems impossible. Baby Luke is not hidden on Tatooine. Instead, he's brought to one of these hidden sanctuaries, a remote facility on Dantooine where surviving Jedi have established a refuge. Leia is there too, retrieved from Alderaan not to hide her but to train her. Both twins together as they should have been. Owen and Beru Lars never raised Luke. Bail Organa doesn't raise Leia alone. Instead, the Skywalker twins grow up among Jedi, knowing from their first memories what they are, who their father was, what they're meant to become. Obi-Wan trains them personally, not as a secret, not as a desperate last hope, but as students in a functioning, if hidden, Jedi community. Luke's childhood is filled with lessons about the Force, about lightsaber combat, about diplomacy and strategy and history. He learns from Obi-Wan's successes and failures, hears stories about the Old Republic and the Clone Wars, understands the mistakes that led to the Order's fall. He grows up not as a naive farm boy, dreaming of adventure, but as a Jedi apprentice, being prepared for the reality of serving a galaxy under Imperial tyranny. Leia's training runs parallel to Luke's. She shows different strengths, less interested in combat and more fascinated by politics and strategy. Obi-Wan recognizes this and encourages it, seeing in her echoes of her mother Padme, understanding that the Jedi Order needs more than warriors. He teaches her statecraft alongside Force techniques, how to negotiate while using subtle Force persuasion, how to lead without dominating. She becomes something the Old Order rarely produced, a Jedi equally skilled in politics and the Force. The hidden Jedi network maintains strict secrecy for years. They know they're not strong enough to oppose the Empire directly, that revealing themselves would invite extermination. But they don't remain passive. Jedi operatives work within the emerging rebellion, providing intelligence, conducting sabotage, assassinating key Imperial officials. They're ghosts, rumors, urban legends that Imperial officers dismiss as rebel propaganda. But they're real, and they're effective, slowly eroding Imperial control in ways that conventional military operations never could. Obi-Wan becomes the de facto Grand Master, not through formal ceremony but through universal recognition among survivors that he's the one holding them together. He's the bridge between the Old Order and whatever comes next, the keeper of traditions that shouldn't be lost, the wise voice preventing desperate survivors from making mistakes born of fear and anger. He's careful, patient, playing a long game against an emperor who thinks all the Jedi are dead. The revelation to Luke and Leia about their father comes early. Not as a devastating shock, but as a lesson integrated into their training. Obi-Wan tells them the truth when they're 12, old enough to understand complexity, young enough that it becomes part of their identity rather than shattering it. He explains how Anakin Skywalker fell, what mistakes led to Darth Vader, what the old order did wrong that enabled Palpatine's rise. The twins grow up knowing they carry darkness in their bloodline, learning to acknowledge it without fear. Understanding that being Anakin's children means they must be vigilant but doesn't mean they're doomed. This knowledge shapes them profoundly. Luke becomes intensely focused on self-control, on never letting emotion cloud judgment, on being the Jedi his father should have been. Leia develops a deep distrust of concentrated power, understanding that even good intentions can lead to tyranny, that systems and institutions matter more than individual virtue. They're not innocent children discovering shocking truths. They're trained Jedi who understand the stakes, who know what they're fighting against and why. When the twins reach 16, Obi-Wan judges them ready for their first real mission. Nothing too dangerous, just intelligence gathering on an Imperial-controlled world, proving they can operate independently. The mission succeeds, both twins demonstrating competence beyond their years. They return to Dantooine changed, having seen the Empire's cruelty firsthand, understanding in their bones, rather than just intellectually, why the Jedi must oppose Palpatine. The hidden Jedi Order grows slowly but steadily. By the time Luke and Leia are 18, there are nearly 50 Jedi Knights operating across the galaxy, supported by a network of sympathizers and allies. It's nothing compared to the old Order's thousands, but it's a functional organization, capable of coordinated operations, strong enough to matter. And crucially, it's learning from the past, avoiding the mistakes that destroyed its predecessor. Obi-Wan's leadership emphasizes humility and service over power and prestige. The new order doesn't seek political authority, doesn't position itself as the Republic's military commanders, doesn't forget that pride comes before a fall. Jedi serve the rebellion as advisors and specialists, not as generals issuing orders. They're a resource to be deployed strategically, not an institution demanding deference. This approach prevents the resentment that complicated the old order's relationship with the Republic, creating genuine partnership rather than uneasy coexistence. The rebellion's leadership learns about the Jedi gradually, as trust builds and operational security allows. Mon Mothma is told first, her diplomatic skills and discretion making her a natural ally. She's shocked to learn that Jedi survived, that they've been operating in secret, that there's an entire hidden dimension to the rebellion she knew nothing about. But she also immediately grasps the strategic implications, understanding that Force users provide capabilities that conventional forces simply cannot match. Bail Organa discovers the truth when Leia reveals it to him. She's conflicted about the deception, having grown up knowing Bail as a father figure while being raised by Jedi, maintaining a double life that becomes increasingly complicated as she ages. When she finally tells him the truth, expecting anger or hurt, Bail instead feels relief. He always knew there was something different about her, something he couldn't quite identify. Learning she's Force-sensitive, that she's been training as a Jedi, explains so much. And learning that Obi-Wan Kenobi survived, that he's been rebuilding the Order, gives Bail hope that the Empire might actually be defeated. The revelation of the Death Star plans when it comes changes everything. The rebellion learns that the Empire has built a superweapon capable of destroying planets, that Alderaan might be a target, that the stakes have escalated beyond conventional warfare. The plan to assault the Death Star is desperate, nearly suicidal, but necessary. And this time, unlike the original timeline, the rebellion has multiple Force-sensitive pilots to make the impossible possible. Luke flies in the attack, as he did before, but he's not a farm boy with minimal training. He's a Jedi Knight, skilled and experienced, flying with confidence born of years of preparation. Leia coordinates from the Rebel Command Center, using the Force to maintain battle meditation, keeping pilots calm and focused, turning chaos into coordinated action. A half-dozen other Jedi fly in the assault wings, their presence multiplying the effectiveness of conventional forces. The battle unfolds differently. The Empire still deploys overwhelming defenses, still sends TIE fighters against the Rebel attack wings, still threatens to destroy the assault before it can succeed. But the Jedi make the difference. They sense attacks before they come, coordinate maneuvers that shouldn't be possible. The hunt leads him eventually to Obi-Wan. through captured rebels, through tortured informants, through careful analysis of rebellion operations, Vader pieces together that his old master survived, that Obi-Wan Kenobi leads the surviving Jedi, that the man he fought on Mustafar has been orchestrating resistance for years. The revelation triggers something in Vader, a storm of emotions that the dark side can't fully suppress. Anger, betrayal, and underneath it all, something that might be hope, might be longing, might be the faintest echo of who he used to be. Their confrontation comes on Bespin, where Vader springs a trap hoping to capture Obi-Wan and his students. Luke and Leia are there, having come to rescue Han Solo from Jabba's bounty hunters who are delivering him to the Empire. Obi-Wan accompanies them, sensing through the Force that this meeting with Vader is inevitable, that running will only delay what must be faced. The duel between Obi-Wan and Vader is nothing like their brief clash on the Death Star in the original timeline. This time Obi-Wan is in his prime, not an old hermit but a functioning Jedi Master who has spent 20 years training rather than hiding. Vader is powerful, consumed by dark side strength, but Obi-Wan knows him, knows his patterns, knows exactly how to counter the aggressive style that Anakin always favored. They're evenly matched, their duel a dance of blue and red light, neither able to gain decisive advantage. Luke and Leia fight Vader's forces, protecting their master, preventing interference in the duel. They're skilled enough to hold their own against stormtroopers and even against some of the Inquisitors Vader brought with him, but they're not ready to face Vader himself, not yet. They need more training, more experience, more time to develop the strength necessary to challenge a Sith Lord. The duel between Obi-Wan and Vader ends inconclusively, both wounded but alive, separated by the battle raging around them. But something passes between them in those final moments before they're forced apart. Obi-Wan sees the conflict in Vader, senses the struggle between Anakin and the dark side, recognizes that his former apprentice isn't completely lost. Vader sees the disappointment in Obi-Wan's eyes, the sorrow, the love that survives despite everything. It shakes him in ways that combat never could. The rebels escape Bespin, but the encounter changes everything. Vader reports to Palpatine that Obi-Wan Kenobi survived, that he's been training new Jedi, that the Order is rebuilding. The Emperor is furious, his carefully constructed plans disrupted by variables he thought eliminated. He orders a new purge, deploying Inquisitors and Vader to hunt down these surviving Jedi, to finish what Order 66 started. But hunting organized, prepared Jedi is very different from massacring unsuspecting victims. The Inquisitors face knights who spent years training specifically to fight dark side users, who know their tactics, who have planned for this confrontation. The Purge becomes a war, battles fought across a dozen worlds, victories and losses on both sides. The Jedi take casualties, knights killed by Inquisitors or by Vader himself. But they also win victories, eliminating Inquisitors, destroying Imperial facilities, proving that the Order won't be wiped out easily. Obi-Wan coordinates this shadow war from hidden bases, moving constantly, using all his diplomatic and strategic skills to keep the Jedi organized and effective. He's in his 60s now, feeling his age, aware that he won't be around forever to guide the Order. He begins preparing Luke and Leia for leadership, teaching them not just combat and force techniques, but strategy and politics, everything they'll need to lead when he's gone. The question of Vader becomes central to Jedi strategy. Can Anakin Skywalker be redeemed? Should they even try? Luke argues passionately that his father can be saved, that the good in him isn't completely destroyed, that trying is worth the risk. Leia is skeptical, seeing Vader's atrocities, doubting that redemption is possible for someone who has done so much evil. Obi-Wan is conflicted, wanting to believe his former apprentice can be saved, but knowing the dangers of false hope. The debate divides the Order. Some support Luke's position, arguing that redemption is a core Jedi principle, that giving up on Vader means betraying what the Order stands for. Others argue that pragmatism requires recognizing when someone is beyond saving, that attempting to redeem Vader risks lives that could be saved by simply killing him. Obi-Wan refuses to issue a definitive ruling, believing that this is a question each Jedi must answer for themselves. Years pass. The war between the Rebellion and the Empire escalates. Jedi fight alongside conventional forces, their presence providing advantages that slowly tip the balance. The Empire remains stronger in raw military might, but the Rebellion has hope, has Force users, has heroes who inspire populations to resist. The cost is terrible, billions dead, Entire systems devastated, the galaxy bleeding from a wound that won't heal cleanly. Luke and Leia grow into powerful Jedi Masters under Obi-Wan's guidance. Luke becomes known for his compassion and his belief in redemption, for his willingness to see good even in enemies, for his optimism that sometimes borders on naivety. Leia becomes known for her strategic brilliance and her political acumen, for her ability to navigate complex situations, for her pragmatic approach to problems that Luke handles emotionally. Together, they balance each other, their different perspectives creating a partnership more effective than either would be alone. The final battle comes on Endor, as it did in the original timeline, but with crucial differences. The assault on the Death Star's shield generator includes multiple Jedi, not just Luke. The space battle features Jedi pilots coordinating through the Force, creating tactical advantages that overwhelm Imperial defenses. And on the Death Star itself, when Luke finally confronts Vader and Palpatine, he's not alone. Obi-Wan is there with him. The old master, now in his 70s, insisting that he must face his former apprentice one final time, that this is his responsibility, that Luke shouldn't bear this burden alone. Leia is there too, having infiltrated the station with a strike team, her presence through the Force lending strength to her brother. The confrontation in the throne room becomes not one Jedi facing two Sith, but a battle that balances differently. Palpatine tries to turn Luke to the dark side, offering the same temptations that worked on Anakin: power to save those he loves, strength to protect the galaxy, freedom from the Jedi's restrictive rules. But Luke, raised by Obi-Wan with full knowledge of his father's fall, knowing exactly what mistakes to avoid, rejects every offer. He's not tempted. He's not vulnerable. He's the Jedi his father should have been, and Palpatine's manipulation finds no purchase. The battle that follows tests everyone to their limits. Palpatine unleashes Force lightning, targeting Obi-Wan, trying to kill his oldest enemy. Vader intervenes, torn between loyalty to his master and something deeper, something that remembers who he used to be. Luke fights defensively, protecting rather than attacking, trying to create space for Vader to make a choice. Leia, coordinating from elsewhere on the station, uses battle meditation to support rebel forces, to help her brother and her teacher through the Force. In the climactic moment, when Palpatine is about to kill Obi-Wan with Force lightning, when the Emperor believes he's won, Vader makes his choice. He turns on Palpatine, lifting his master and throwing him down the reactor shaft, choosing love over hate, choosing his son over his allegiance, choosing redemption over damnation. The Emperor's death cry echoes through the Force as he falls, and the dark side's grip on the galaxy shatters. But Vader survives. In this timeline, with Obi-Wan there to heal him immediately, with the Force sustaining him, Anakin Skywalker doesn't die redeeming himself. He lives to face the consequences of his choices, to confront the people he hurt, to begin the long process of atonement. His life support systems are damaged but repairable. His body is broken but not beyond saving. He survives, and that survival becomes its own kind of justice, forcing him to live with what he did, rather than escaping through death. The question of what to do with Anakin Skywalker becomes the rebellion's most controversial debate. Many want him executed for war crimes, for the atrocities he committed as Vader. Others argue that he deserves a chance at redemption, that punishing someone who turned against evil reinforces the cycle of revenge. Obi-Wan, asked for his opinion, says simply that Anakin must face justice, but that justice should include the possibility of redemption, that killing him would waste the sacrifice he made to save Luke. The compromise is imprisonment with the possibility of parole, confinement in a secure facility where Anakin can't harm anyone, but where he can work toward making amends. It's not perfect, satisfying neither those who want vengeance nor those who want immediate forgiveness, but it's just acknowledging both his crimes and his final choice, providing accountability while leaving room for redemption. Luke visits his father regularly, trying to build a relationship despite everything, believing that connection can heal wounds that punishment cannot. Leia refuses to visit, unable to forgive the man who tortured her, who destroyed Alderaan in another timeline, who represents everything she's fought against. Obi-Wan visits occasionally, their conversations painful and difficult. Two old men reckoning with how their relationship fell apart, whether it could have been saved, what it means that they're both still alive. The New Republic rises from the Empire's ashes, and with it, the Jedi Order emerges from hiding. Obi-Wan formally accepts the title of Grand Master, leading the Order as it transitions from secret resistance to public institution. He establishes the new Jedi Temple on Coruscant, rebuilding on the ruins of the old, symbolically connecting past and future while learning from past mistakes. His approach to rebuilding differs fundamentally from Luke's in the original timeline. Obi-Wan doesn't try to recreate the old Republic's Jedi Order. He understands too well how that order's flaws enabled its fall. Instead, he creates something new, drawing on old wisdom while adapting to new realities. The new order is smaller, more selective, more focused on individual growth than mass recruitment. It emphasizes humility and service, rejecting the pride that contributed to the old order's fall. Most importantly, Obi-Wan addresses the attachment question that destroyed Anakin. The new order doesn't forbid love or connection. It teaches healthy ways to experience emotion without being controlled by it. Jedi are allowed to marry, to have families, to maintain bonds with people outside the order. Luke marries Mara Jade, a former Emperor's hand who Luke helped redeem, and they have children. Leia marries Han Solo, balancing her Jedi training with political career and family life. The question of training younglings becomes central to the new order's philosophy. Obi-Wan establishes that Force-sensitive children will be trained while remaining with their families when possible, coming to the temple for instruction but maintaining their connections to home. The isolation that the old order practiced is recognized as harmful, creating emotional vulnerabilities that Sith Lords exploited. Connection strengthens rather than weakens, provided Jedi understand the difference between love and attachment, between caring and possessing. Ben Solo, when he's born to Leia and Han, grows up in a very different environment than the original timeline. He's raised with full knowledge of his grandfather's history, not as a shameful secret but as a cautionary tale. He knows that Anakin Skywalker fell and became Darth Vader, that he redeemed himself but only after tremendous suffering, that carrying Skywalker blood means carrying the potential for both great good and terrible evil. Obi-Wan takes personal interest in Ben's training, determined that history won't repeat itself, that the mistakes made with Anakin won't be made with his grandson. He teaches Ben about the dark side, about temptation, about the choices that lead to corruption. He's honest about his own failures, about how he failed Anakin, about what he should have done differently. This honesty creates trust, giving Ben a support system that his grandfather never had. The result is that Ben Solo doesn't fall. He struggles with darkness, as all Skywalkers do, but he has tools to manage it. He has Obi-Wan's wisdom, Luke's compassion, Leia's pragmatism, a community that supports him. The isolation and resentment that created Kylo Ren never develop because Ben is never isolated or neglected. He becomes a capable Jedi Knight, eventually a master, contributing to the Order rather than destroying it. Rey's discovery happens differently in this timeline. The orphan from Jakku is found earlier by Obi-Wan's Jedi, brought to the temple, given proper training. Learning she's Palpatine's granddaughter is still traumatic, but she's not alone with that knowledge. Obi-Wan, who dealt with Anakin's fall and Vader's redemption, has experience helping students process dark heritage. He teaches Rey what he taught Ben, that blood suggests tendencies but doesn't mandate destiny, that you choose who you become. That darkness in your lineage means you must be vigilant, but doesn't mean you're doomed. As decades pass, as Obi-Wan ages into his 80s and 90s, the Order he built proves its worth. It's smaller than the old Order, more focused, better integrated into the society it serves. It avoids the mistakes that destroyed its predecessor while honoring the wisdom that made the old Order great. Jedi serve as guardians and advisors rather than rulers, as servants rather than masters, as people who use extraordinary gifts for ordinary purposes. Obi-Wan's health fails gradually, his body worn by decades of war and stress. He knows he's dying, that his time is running out, but he's satisfied. The Order will continue after him. Luke is ready to lead, seasoned by experience, wise enough to navigate challenges that would have destroyed a younger, less prepared Grand Master. Leia provides political support and strategic guidance. Ben, Rey, and a new generation of Jedi trained under the new philosophy ensure continuity. On his deathbed, surrounded by students and friends, Obi-Wan reflects on his life. He thinks about Qui-Gon, his master who taught him that the living force matters more than rules. He thinks about Anakin, the brilliant, troubled apprentice he failed and then helped redeem. He thinks about Luke and Leia, the twins he raised, who became the Jedi the galaxy needed. He thinks about the order he built, imperfect but functional, capable of serving the galaxy without dominating it. His final words are simple, spoken to Luke, who kneels beside him. "The Force will be with you always, as it was with me, as it will be with those who come after. Remember what I taught you. Remember the mistakes we made. Do better than we did." That's all anyone can ask. And then Obi-Wan Kenobi, negotiator, warrior, teacher, Grandmaster, becomes one with the Force, his presence remaining as a gentle guidance in the living Force, available to those who know how to listen. Luke succeeds Obi-Wan as Grandmaster, accepting the responsibility with the humility his teacher instilled in him. He leads the Order for decades, building on Obi-Wan's foundation, adapting to new challenges while maintaining core principles. The galaxy under his stewardship is not perfect, but it's better, shaped by Jedi who learn from past mistakes, who serve without demanding deference, who understand that power is responsibility rather than privilege. The threats that emerged in the original timeline largely fail to manifest. The First Order never rises because the New Republic is stronger, protected by an established Jedi Order, led by people who understand the dangers of complacency. Snoke's attempts to corrupt Ben Solo fail because Ben has support systems and training that make him resistant to manipulation. The sequel trilogy's darkness never occurs because the foundations are stronger, the Order more resilient, the galaxy more prepared. Centuries pass. The Jedi Order that Obi-Wan rebuilt continues evolving, adapting to new eras while maintaining the wisdom he passed down. His teachings become foundational texts studied by every generation of Jedi, providing guidance for how to serve without dominating, how to wield power without being corrupted by it, how to learn from failure without being destroyed by it. Historians analyzing this timeline identify Obi-Wan's survival as the crucial divergence point, not because he was the most powerful Jedi, not because he won dramatic battles, but because he was the right person at the right time with the right qualities. His patience prevented desperate mistakes. His wisdom avoided repeating past errors. His humility created an order that served rather than ruled. His diplomatic skills held together frightened survivors and turned them into a functional organization. What if Obi-Wan became Grand Master after Yoda? The galaxy answers through centuries of evidence. The answer is a Jedi Order that learned from its mistakes, that adapted without abandoning its principles, that served the Force by serving the people. The answer is Luke and Leia raised by the greatest teacher, becoming the Jedi they were meant to be, rather than the broken, incomplete versions that trauma created in another timeline. The answer is Ben Solo and Rey trained properly, never falling because they had support that Anakin never had. But the path to that stronger order requires walking through decades of challenges that test whether Obi-Wan's patient approach can withstand the pressures of a galaxy still recovering from tyranny. The years following Palpatine's death bring a period historians call the Restoration, when the Jedi must define what they will become while the New Republic struggles to establish legitimate governance across thousands of systems. The debate within the new Jedi Council becomes intense, sometimes approaching the bitter divisions that weakened the old order. On one side stand those who advocate for rapid expansion, arguing that the galaxy needs Jedi now that Force-sensitive children are being lost to darkness while the Order debates philosophy. They point to Imperial remnants still controlling sectors, to criminal syndicates exploiting the power vacuum, to populations suffering because there aren't enough Jedi to help them. On the other side stand those who advocate for careful, measured growth, arguing that the old Order's mistakes came partly from becoming too large too quickly, from accepting students without proper vetting, from prioritizing quantity over quality. They point to how Palpatine infiltrated and corrupted the old Order, to how unprepared Jedi became vulnerable to manipulation, to how rapid expansion creates vulnerabilities that enemies exploit. Obi-Wan navigates these debates with characteristic diplomacy, finding middle ground that satisfies neither extreme but prevents the schism that could destroy the fragile order. The compromise establishes measured growth with strict quality standards. The Order will expand, accepting new students, establishing new temples, but only at a pace that allows proper training and vetting. Every master must prove capable before taking students. Every temple must demonstrate stability before. His disagreements with Obi-Wan become public, creating tension that some fear will split the Order. Luke argues passionately in council meetings that the galaxy cannot wait, that people are dying while Jedi debate philosophy. That sometimes you must act without perfect preparation because waiting means more suffering. Obi-Wan responds with equal passion that acting without preparation is how the old order fell, that Palpatine exploited haste and overconfidence, that patience isn't cowardice but wisdom earned through painful experience. The conflict reaches a climax when Luke proposes a mission to liberate a world still under Imperial control, a mission that Obi-Wan judges too risky given available resources. Luke argues they must try anyway, that the Jedi's purpose is protecting people even at great risk. Obi-Wan counters that sending Jedi on a mission likely to fail wastes lives that could save many more people through careful planning. The debate becomes heated, with other council members taking sides. The Order's unity threatened by fundamentally different philosophies about how to serve. The resolution comes not through either side winning, but through both recognizing that they need each other. Obi-Wan's caution prevents reckless mistakes that would waste lives. Luke's urgency prevents paralysis that would allow suffering to continue unchallenged. The synthesis of their perspectives creates an order that's both careful and active, both prudent and compassionate, both wise and bold. The mission Luke proposed goes forward, but with modifications Obi-Wan suggests, additional support and contingency planning that turns a reckless gamble into a calculated risk. The mission succeeds, liberating the world at acceptable cost, validating both perspectives. Luke's instinct that action was necessary proves correct. Obi-Wan's modifications that made the action survivable prove equally correct. The experience teaches the Council that tension between different approaches strengthens rather than weakens decision-making. That diversity of perspective prevents groupthink. That the answer is usually somewhere between extremes rather than at either pole. This lesson becomes foundational to how the Order operates. Council meetings are expected to feature debate, disagreement, different viewpoints arguing passionately for their positions. Consensus is sought but not required. When the Council cannot agree, the Grand Master makes the final call, but dissenting opinions are recorded and considered. The old Order's facade of unanimous agreement, its pretense that wise Jedi always reached identical conclusions, is recognized as having suppressed valuable perspectives and enabled groupthink. Leia contributes to the Order's development while maintaining her political career. Now serving as Chief of State of the New Republic, her dual role creates both opportunities and complications. She can coordinate between Jedi and government in ways that prevent misunderstanding and conflict. But she also faces accusations of conflicts of interest, of using Jedi to advance political agendas, of representing a return to the dangerous intermingling of Force users and political power that contributed to the old Order's fall. She navigates these challenges through transparency and accountability, establishing clear boundaries between her roles, recusing herself from decisions where conflicts exist, maintaining public disclosure about her Jedi training and how it influences her governance. Her approach becomes a model for other Force-sensitive individuals in political positions, creating precedents for how Jedi can participate in democratic governance without dominating it. The question of what to do with Anakin Skywalker continues to divide both the Jedi Order and the broader galaxy. His imprisonment on Coruscant becomes a focal point for debates about justice, redemption, and accountability. Some argue he should be executed for crimes against sentient species, that his final turn to light doesn't erase decades of atrocity. Others argue that killing someone who chose redemption sends the message that there's no point in changing, that evil is permanent, that mercy is weakness. Obi-Wan visits Anakin regularly in prison. Their conversations painful and difficult but necessary. They talk about the past, about what went wrong, about choices made and opportunities missed. Anakin expresses remorse that seems genuine, describing how the dark side twisted his perceptions, how anger and fear consumed him until Darth Vader felt like a different person. But he also accepts responsibility, acknowledging that he chose that path, that understanding how it happened doesn't excuse what he did. These conversations change Obi-Wan's perspective on his own role in Anakin's fall. He recognizes mistakes he made as a teacher, ways he failed his apprentice, times he prioritized rules over relationship or judgment over understanding. This recognition doesn't mean Anakin's fall was Obi-Wan's fault. Adults make their own choices, but it means Obi-Wan understands his failures contributed to creating conditions where those choices seemed reasonable to Anakin. He incorporates these lessons into his teaching, creating training methods specifically designed to prevent the isolation and emotional dysfunction that made Anakin vulnerable. Masters are taught to maintain relationships with students beyond formal instruction, to know their students as people rather than just apprentices, to recognize warning signs of emotional distress before they become crises. The Old Order's emotional distance, its insistence that Jedi remain aloof and separate, is recognized as having prevented the very support that might have saved Anakin. Luke's relationship with his imprisoned father becomes one of the defining features of this era. He visits constantly, trying to build connection despite everything, believing that redemption requires relationship, that Anakin needs family to complete his transformation. The visits are supervised, closely monitored, but they happen. Father and son talk about the Force, about choices, about what it means to live with consequences. Slowly, painfully, something like a relationship develops. Leia refuses to visit for years, unable to forgive, unable to see Vader as anything but the monster who tortured her, who would have destroyed everything she loved. Her anger is righteous, her refusal understandable, her choice respected by those who love her. But eventually, prompted by Obi-Wan's gentle encouragement, she agrees to one visit to speak to Anakin once, to see if there's anything worth forgiving. The meeting is tense. Anakin facing the daughter he never knew he had. Leia confronting the father she wishes didn't exist. They don't reconcile. They don't embrace. They simply acknowledge each other's existence, each other's pain, the complicated reality that they're family despite neither wanting it. It's not forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever. But it's a start, an acknowledgement that even the most justified anger doesn't have to be eternal. That people contain multitudes, that Vader and Anakin can both be real without erasing either. As the decades pass, as the generation that fought the Empire ages into leadership and then retirement, new challenges emerge that test the Order's evolution. The first major crisis comes with the discovery of Sith artifacts on Korriban, ancient objects containing dark side knowledge that some Jedi argue should be studied and others insist should be destroyed. The debate becomes heated, exposing philosophical divisions within the Order. Some argue that understanding the dark side requires studying it, that knowledge is never dangerous in itself, that the Jedi cannot fight what they don't understand. Others counter that Sith artifacts are inherently corrupting, that exposure to concentrated dark side energy warps judgment, that some knowledge is better left forgotten. The Council is divided, unable to reach consensus. Obi-Wan, now in his 80s, makes the difficult decision to allow limited study under strict controls. Specific Jedi, carefully chosen for their stability and experience, will be permitted to examine the artifacts in controlled environments with constant monitoring. The knowledge gained will be shared with the Council, used to better understand dark side techniques and how to counter them. But the artifacts themselves will remain secured. The decision proves controversial, but effective. The studying Jedi do gain valuable insights, developing techniques to resist dark side corruption, understanding Sith philosophy well enough to counter it. But the process also proves dangerous. One Jedi becomes obsessed with the artifacts, begins exhibiting signs of dark side corruption, must be removed from the study and helped back to balance through intensive counseling and meditation. The incident validates both perspectives. Study provided useful knowledge, but the danger was real and required constant vigilance. Ben Solo's journey to becoming a Jedi Master proves more complicated than anyone expected. Despite his supportive upbringing, despite Obi-Wan's personal attention, despite having every advantage his grandfather lacked, Ben still struggles with darkness. The Skywalker blood runs true, and with it comes temptation, anger that rises unexpectedly, power that begs to be used without restraint. The difference is that Ben has tools to manage his darkness, support systems to fall back on when temptation becomes strong. When he feels the pull toward anger, he has Obi-Wan to talk to, Luke to guide him, Leia to ground him. When dark thoughts become intrusive, he has meditation techniques and counseling rather than being told to suppress his feelings and maintain Jedi composure. He learns that having dark impulses doesn't make him evil, that what matters is what he does with those impulses. That struggle is normal rather than shameful. His journey becomes a model for other Jedi dealing with similar challenges. The Order develops support systems specifically for students struggling with dark side temptation, recognizing that pretending the problem doesn't exist only makes it worse. Counselors are trained in helping Jedi process difficult emotions, Meditation techniques are developed specifically for managing intrusive thoughts. The shame that the old order attached to struggling with darkness is replaced with acknowledgement that struggle is normal, that light and dark exist in everyone, that being a Jedi means choosing light repeatedly rather than never feeling darkness at all. Rey's training under Obi-Wan proves equally transformative, though her challenges are different. Being Palpatine's granddaughter carries different weight than being Vader's grandson. Where Ben carries the legacy of a redeemed Darksider, Rey carries the legacy of pure evil, of a Sith Lord so consumed by darkness that no redemption was possible. The burden of that heritage weighs on her differently, creating self-doubt about whether darkness in her blood makes her inevitable fall just a matter of time. Obi-Wan addresses this through brutal honesty combined with unwavering support. He tells Rey that yes, she carries darkness in her bloodline, that being Palpatine's granddaughter means she'll always feel the pull toward power and domination. But he also tells her that bloodlines suggest tendencies, not destinies, that she chooses who she becomes every day, that carrying dark heritage makes vigilance necessary, but doesn't make her evil unless she chooses to become evil. He shares his own experiences with failure, with watching Anakin fall despite his best efforts, with the guilt and self-doubt that plagued him for decades. He tells her that everyone carries darkness, that being descended from someone particularly dark just makes the struggle more visible. That visibility can be a gift because it forces confrontation rather than allowing darkness to hide unexamined. His honesty gives Rey permission to struggle, to admit when she's having difficulty, to seek help rather than pretending she's fine. The training methods Obi-Wan develops for Rey become foundational for teaching other students with complicated heritages. The Order recognizes that Force-sensitive children come from all backgrounds, that some carry family histories of darkness, that pretending bloodline doesn't matter is dangerous because it prevents addressing the real challenges students face. Specialized training is developed for students from dark side families, for children of former inquisitors seeking redemption, for younglings whose parents served the Empire. As Obi-Wan enters his 90s, his health deteriorating despite the Force sustaining him, he focuses on ensuring smooth succession. He's trained multiple potential successors, believing that having options prevents power struggles, that competition for leadership role damages the Order's unity. Luke is the obvious choice, most experienced and widely respected, but Obi-Wan ensures that Leia, Ben, Rey, and several other masters are equally prepared to lead should circumstances require it. The succession planning includes documenting everything he's learned over 9 decades, every mistake made and lesson learned, every insight about training and leadership and managing the balance between tradition and innovation. His writings fill libraries, becoming foundational texts that future generations of Jedi will study, debate, and build upon. He's not creating dogma, he's creating resources, providing future Jedi with information to make their own decisions rather than dictating what those decisions should be. His documentation includes extensive material about his failures, about times he made wrong calls, about students he failed to help, about missions that went badly because of his mistakes. This honesty is revolutionary. The Old Order documented successes and wisdom, but rarely acknowledged failures or doubts. Masters were presented as infallible sources of wisdom, rather than as people doing their best in difficult circumstances. Obi-Wan's willingness to document failure gives future Jedi permission to be human, to admit when they're wrong, to learn from mistakes rather than pretending they never happened. The end comes peacefully for Obi-Wan Kenobi, surrounded by students and friends in his quarters at the Coruscant Temple. Luke and Leia are there, the twins he raised. Ben and Rey are there, the next generation he prepared for leadership. Anakin is there too, granted temporary release from prison under heavy guard to say goodbye to the man who was master, friend, enemy, and finally, something like a brother again. Their final conversation is private, everyone else giving them space for words that need to be said before it's too late. They talk about Qui-Gon, about the old order, about paths taken and not taken. Anakin thanks Obi-Wan for never giving up on him, for believing redemption was possible even when everyone else argued for execution, for giving him the chance to become something other than Vader. Obi-Wan tells Anakin that he's sorry, that he failed as a teacher, that if he'd been wiser or more patient or better at understanding emotional complexity, maybe things would have been different. Anakin rejects this, insisting that his fall was his own choice, that Obi-Wan's teaching was as good as anyone could have provided, that the fault lies with the student who rejected wisdom rather than the teacher who offered it. They don't resolve decades of complicated history in one conversation, but they achieve something like peace, an acknowledgement that they both did their best in circumstances that defeated better people, that love survived despite everything, that forgiveness is possible even when forgetting isn't. When Obi-Wan dies, becoming one with the Force, his passing is felt across the galaxy by everyone, even slightly Force-sensitive. His presence doesn't disappear, but rather spreads, becoming part of the living Force in ways that few Jedi achieve. Those who knew him sense his guidance continuing, available to those who know how to listen, providing wisdom from beyond death in moments of crisis or doubt. The funeral is massive, attended by millions either in person or via hologram. Jedi from across the galaxy come to honor the Grand Master who rebuilt their order, who proved that patient wisdom could overcome even the darkest tyranny, who taught generations of students that service matters more than power. Non-Jedi come too, ordinary people whose lives Obi-Wan touched, populations he helped liberate, communities he protected, families he saved. Luke delivers the primary eulogy, speaking of his teacher with love and admiration, tempered by honest acknowledgement of flaws and failures. He talks about how Obi-Wan taught him that being a Jedi isn't about perfection, but about trying, about getting up after you fall, about serving even when service is difficult or dangerous. He talks about patience and wisdom, about how the greatest victories often come through years of unglamorous work rather than dramatic battles. But he also talks about Obi-Wan's regrets, about Anakin's fall haunting him for decades, about mistakes that couldn't be undone or forgotten. He talks about this not to diminish Obi-Wan's legacy, but to honor the truth of who he was, a person, not a legend. Someone who struggled and doubted and failed, and yet still managed to change the galaxy through sheer determination and wisdom earned through suffering. Luke succeeds Obi-Wan as Grand Master, accepting the role with humility that his teacher instilled. He's 60 years old, experienced enough to lead but young enough to guide the Order for decades. His approach differs from Obi-Wan's in temperament, but follows the same principles: patient growth, measured expansion, learning from mistakes, serving without dominating. The transition is smooth because Obi-Wan prepared it to be, because succession planning was viewed as important rather than morbid. Under Luke's leadership, the Order continues evolving while maintaining core principles Obi-Wan established. Jedi remain integrated into communities rather than separate from them. Training emphasizes emotional health alongside Force technique. Masters maintain genuine relationships with students rather than distant authority. The Order serves the New Republic without being controlled by it, providing advice and assistance while respecting democratic authority. The challenges Luke faces test whether Obi-Wan's principles can survive without Obi-Wan enforcing them. A faction emerges advocating for return to old Order practices, arguing that Obi-Wan's reforms went too far, that traditional distance and emotional control made Jedi stronger. They point to Jedi who struggle with attachment, to complications arising from masters having families, to difficulties coordinating an order whose members are scattered among civilian populations. Luke addresses these concerns not through authoritarian decree but through demonstration. He commissions studies comparing outcomes for Jedi trained under different methods, showing that those raised with families fall to darkness less frequently than those raised in isolation. He organizes debates where different perspectives can be argued, refusing to suppress viewpoints he disagrees with. He implements modest adjustments where critics have valid points while maintaining core principles, where evidence supports them. This approach frustrates both reformers who want faster change and traditionalists who want return to old ways. But it works, creating an order that's diverse in practice while united in core values, that accommodates different teaching styles while preventing approaches proven harmful. The order becomes stronger through internal debate rather than weaker, because different perspectives check each other's excesses, because no single faction can dominate. The Yuuzhan Vong invasion, when it comes decades after Obi-Wan's death, proves the ultimate test of whether his reforms created sustainable strength. These extragalactic invaders, immune to force sensing using organic technology, represent exactly the challenge that the old order might have handled better through centralized command and martial discipline. The scattered family-integrated structure that Obi-Wan built seems potentially vulnerable to an enemy that conventional Jedi advantages cannot defeat. But the war proves the reform's value. Jedi fight harder because they're protecting specific people they love rather than abstract principles. The community integration means that Jedi can call on local support networks, can coordinate with civilian populations who trust them, can operate effectively even when cut off from central command. The emotional health that family connections provide prevents the despair and burnout that claimed many Jedi during the Clone Wars. Luke coordinates the war effort from Coruscant, now in his 70s but still active and capable. Ben Solo, now a Master and Council member, leads combat operations, using lessons learned from studying Clone Wars history to avoid repeating mistakes. Rey specializes in counter-infiltration, hunting Yuuzhan Vong agents attempting to subvert the Republic from within. The next generation of Jedi, trained entirely under Obi-Wan's system, prove that his methods produce capable warriors when necessary, while maintaining the balance and wisdom that makes them effective peacekeepers. The war lasts 5 brutal years, costing millions of lives, including hundreds of Jedi. The Order takes casualties that hurt, that mourn, that remember names and faces rather than just counting numbers. But it doesn't break. The distributed structure means that losing major temples doesn't cripple the Order. The family integration means that every fallen Jedi leaves behind people who carry forward their legacy. The emotional health means that survivors can process grief and trauma rather than being consumed by it. When victory finally comes, when the Yuuzhan Vong threat is neutralized through a combination of military defeat and diplomatic integration, the Jedi Order that emerges is battle-tested and proven. The critics who argued that Obi-Wan's reforms made Jedi too soft, too civilian, too weak for serious conflict are silenced by evidence. The Order fought one of the most dangerous wars in galactic history and emerged stronger rather than shattered. Luke lives to see the war's end and the peace that follows. He guides the Order through post-war reconstruction, helping integrate Yuuzhan Vong refugees, rebuilding destroyed temples, training younglings orphaned by the conflict. He lives to see his grandchildren begin Jedi training, to watch Ben and Rey's children grow, to witness the Order's continued evolution. When he finally dies at 94, having outlived most of his generation, he passes peacefully, satisfied that Obi-Wan's legacy is secure. Ben Solo succeeds Luke as Grand Master, chosen through consensus among the Council. He's in his 60s, younger than Luke was when he took leadership, but old enough for credibility, experienced enough for respect. His tenure faces different challenges than his predecessors, including technological advances that change how Force users interact with society, philosophical debates about the Order's role in an increasingly complex galaxy, and ongoing work to integrate diverse Force traditions into the Jedi framework. The Order he leads is fundamentally Obi-Wan's creation, shaped by principles established decades ago, proven through multiple crises, refined through practical experience. It's larger than the old Order ever was, more diverse, more integrated into society, more resilient. It's not perfect. Perfection is impossible for institutions run by imperfect beings, but it's functional, trusted, effective, serving the galaxy without dominating it. Rey eventually succeeds Ben when he retires, becoming the first Grand Master with no direct connection to the Skywalker line. Her elevation symbolizes that the Order has moved beyond family dynasty, that leadership is earned through wisdom and service rather than inherited through bloodline. She leads for 3 decades, her tenure marked by continued expansion into previously underserved regions, deeper integration with democratic institutions, and ongoing philosophical evolution. The lineage of Grandmasters continues, each building on their predecessors' work, each facing unique challenges, each adapting while maintaining core principles. Obi-Wan's teachings remain foundational, studied by every generation of Jedi, providing guidance even centuries after his death. His emphasis on patient wisdom, on learning from mistakes, on serving without seeking power, becomes so embedded in Jedi culture that future generations assume these principles were always central to the Order's identity. Historians studying this timeline identify multiple factors that allowed the Jedi to survive and thrive where they fell in other timelines. Obi-Wan's survival is crucial but not sufficient alone. His willingness to learn from past mistakes, to adapt rather than repeating old patterns, to prioritize substance over tradition when they conflicted, proved equally important. His patience in rebuilding slowly rather than rushing, his wisdom in training Luke and Leia properly rather than desperately, his courage in confronting rather than hiding, all contributed to creating something sustainable. The galaxy shaped by Obi-Wan's leadership is better not through dramatic transformation, but through accumulated small improvements. Jedi who serve communities build trust that prevents conflicts before they start. Force-sensitive younglings raised with families become healthier adults who make better decisions. An order that learns from mistakes becomes more resilient with each challenge. None of these improvements are individually decisive, but together they create a society more just, more peaceful, more hopeful than alternatives. What if Obi-Wan became Grand Master after Yoda? The answer, proven across centuries, is an order that survived because it adapted, that thrived because it learned, that served effectively because it understood the people it protected. The answer is Luke and Leia raised by the greatest teacher instead of by trauma and necessity. The answer is Ben Solo becoming the Jedi he was meant to be rather than Kylo Ren. The answer is Rey training properly instead of desperately, learning from masters instead of ancient texts. The answer is Anakin Skywalker living to face his crimes, working toward redemption in prison on Coruscant. His survival testament to the idea that it's never too late to change, that choice matters more than destiny, that even the darkest night can give way to dawn. He lives long enough to see his grandchildren become Jedi Masters, to witness the Order rebuilt, to understand finally what Obi-Wan tried to teach him, that love strengthens when understood properly, that attachment corrupts only when twisted by fear, that being a Jedi means accepting loss without trying to control it. Most importantly, the answer is that patient wisdom applied consistently over time creates lasting change, that the greatest victories often come not through dramatic battles but through decades of unglamorous work, that one person choosing to lead rather than hide can reshape the galaxy. Obi-Wan Kenobi was that person. He chose to rebuild rather than despair, to teach rather than mourn, to serve rather than hide. And the galaxy, for 1,000 years after his death, remained better because the negotiator negotiated the hardest deal of all, creating hope from despair, building an order from ruins, proving that wisdom and patience can overcome even the darkest tyranny.